13-year-old Madeline Soto was reported missing in February of 2024. 5 days later, her body was found in a remote area of Osceola County, Florida. She had been strangled to death. The investigation led to her mother's boyfriend, Stephan Stearns. It also revealed that Stearns had been sexually abusing Madeline for years. Now, Stearns is charged with first-degree murder, capital sexual battery, and possession of child sexual abuse material. He's currently awaiting 2 separate trials. And tonight, we're listening in on newly released jailhouse calls made by defendant Stephan Stearns himself. Get ready. Closing arguments starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae filling in tonight for Vinny Politan. Thank you for being with us. We're beginning this hour with new developments in a case that we've been following closely here at Court TV since February of last year. That's when 13-year-old Madeline Soto was reported missing. The search for the Florida teen gained national attention. It wasn't until after 5 days that the news was released that no one wanted to hear. It finally broke that Madeline's remains had been discovered. And they were discovered in a remote location at the side of a road near St. Cloud, Florida. Madeline had been strangled, and on top of the horrible news that Madeline was dead, we then learned even more horrifying details about what prosecutors say her life was like while she was alive. Authorities say that the man who killed her was her mother's boyfriend, Stephan Stearns. They also say he had been sexually abusing her for years in the home that she shared with him and her mother. Now, Stearns is charged with murder and dozens of sex crimes against Madeline. And while he waits for 2 separate upcoming trials to begin, he is being housed in the Osceola County Jail in Florida. And he's also doing something else while he's there, not just eating his 3 hots, not just on his cot. He's also making a lot of phone calls. And those jailhouse phone calls, like most, are recorded. They let you know at the beginning that this is a recorded line, but it doesn't stop people from saying things that can sound incriminating. And tonight we have newly released calls between Stephan Stearns and his parents. And I want to start with one clip where this accused killer is talking to his parents, and he's talking about the discovery of Madeline Soto's dead body.
I had gone downstairs for a while, and by the time I realized anything was wrong, it was just far too late. You know, she'd been gone for a while.
Okay.
Just seeing her pale face and blue lips and how ice cold she was, and it's great.
I was going to stay with you. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I remember seeing my brother when he had passed away, and that's the last thing I remember seeing of him. And so.
Yeah, you know, it's just, you can tell.
Yes, you can. My dad, yeah.
It's just, when they're gone, really, truly gone, there's nothing you can do. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
The they he's talking about there when he says they're gone is 13-year-old Madeline Soto. This information is surprising, it's sickening, but it's also really the first time we've heard from this defendant that he was at least around the body of Madeline Soto before it was discovered by authorities. We have someone here with us who can talk about all the details. He's been there to Osceola, Florida. We have Cody Thomas, our field reporter here at Court TV, who's going to help us break these things down. So, Cody, talk to me about these calls, because he's on the phone with his parents, right?
Absolutely, Julia. And there was almost 4 hours of these calls, newly released calls today. And these calls were in the months after he was arrested for this murder, May, June, in that time frame of last year. Now, one of the most important questions that his mother asked him on one of these jail phone calls, she asked him if he was abused growing up. And her line of thinking is because, you know, he's accused of sexually abusing Madeline, that sexual abusers are usually sometimes abused themselves. He kind of reassures her that neither her nor his father did any of that stuff to him growing up. But then she flat out asks him, "Are you attracted to kids?" To which he answered, "Not generally attracted to kids." And then he goes on to kind of backtrack himself on this call with his parents, pretty much saying he doesn't want to incriminate himself. Take a listen to this portion.
Just that, you know, they say that sometimes when you know, like children, that you have been an abused child, and it was intimated that perhaps we had abused you in some way?
No, he has never did. And strictly speaking, I'm not actually into younger people like that. As you know, I don't even like most kids, so it's just hard to feel a generalized attraction towards any of them.
Was it just her, or was it other people as well?
I can't get into specific details, but no, it was not a thing with anybody. It was
All right, got it.
but I don't want to get too much into details or
Yeah, I know.
confirm or deny anything officially, anything that could possibly be used against me. I mean, I haven't seen the inside of a courtroom yet, so it would be kind of stupid to be making anything that could be construed as an admission of guilt.
And Julia, you heard it there, that pause, assumed to be the names of maybe Madeline or even other minors that he might have mentioned to his parents. But as you were listening, it didn't really sound like a complete no to him being attracted to children or kids. And we also know, he's facing up to or more than 60 plus counts of sexual abuse, and he has a trial coming up for that in May.
I can't believe how calm, how normal they are sounding when they're talking about this, how casual, I guess is the word. But it seems like his mother is struggling with it, like she's trying to get some kind of explanation as to why her son could have done this, but maybe even to cover their own bases, make sure they are not being implicated at all. Tell me what else you found in these calls.
So then he ends up mentioning in another portion of these hours of released phone calls, he ends up mentioning Jen Soto, Madeline's mother. Now he talks about in this portion, everyone's suffering due to Madeline being found dead, including himself. He talks about how, even goes on to sort of defend Jen Soto in her actions and feelings, in some of those interrogations, pretty much saying that her whole world has been turned upside down because of this. She's lost her daughter now, and, this is just a traumatic experience. Take a listen to this part.
Some of the nurses or officers were talking to each other like, let's just take the day off today. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know what, guys? Let's all just take the day off today and come back tomorrow. Well, that would be counterproductive because they want people to suffer. Because suffer. Yeah. If I went home, that'd be, too tempting for me to do something and not go to trial, probably. So they want to make sure that they have their eyes on me at all times. But it's fine. I wouldn't waste too much energy having any sort of grudge or hurt feelings against her. She's suffering too in her own way. So, well, she lost her daughter. Her whole world was turned upside down too. Yeah, but everyone's world got turned upside down by this. No one is having a good time here.
So, Julie, you heard it there. No one is having a good time here. But as I was listening, I find it odd that he's speaking in this way, considering he's the one currently behind bars charged with her murder. The way he's speaking this way. Exactly.
Correct. And when you hear him talking there, it almost sounds like he's delusional about what situation he's in. Is there anything that you're hearing from him in these calls so far? I know you're still digging through them, and we're going to have more coming up later. But anything where he's showing that he understands the gravity of the situation?
So he ends up talking about potential sentences, and we know in the murder case, not the sex abuse case, but the murder case for Madeline, that he is facing the death penalty. And he actually mentions that to his parents, and he talks in a way that as if he's kind of accepting the very possible reality that he could be sentenced to death. Take a listen.
Murder one is about as bad as it can get, and the death penalty is about as extreme as it can go. I don't even know what method they use down here. Oh, I guess that's not so bad, right? You go to sleep and then you go to heaven.
Go to sleep and go to heaven. Like you said, he's sounding very calm, understanding that he could possibly die due to these crimes. And of course, that trial is set for September of this year, Julia. And again, like you said, we got hours upon hours more of these phone calls to go through. But on Monday night on Vinnie Politan Investigates, we will have a huge extravaganza going through more of these calls, the rest of these calls. So we'll have a whole lot to blow up on Monday about this.
Field reporter Cody Thomas, thank you so much for breaking all of that down. I can't wait to talk about it with our think tank, so let's bring them in. Tonight, we have former senior homicide prosecutor and founder of the Villalona Law Firm, Bernardo Villalona, is with us. Also with us, the chief public defender for Oakland County, Michigan. She represented the Oxford High School shooter. Paulette Lofton is here. And we also have trial attorney, big case Michael Jafer with us as well. Thank you all for being here. This case continues to, it seems impossible that it can get sicker as we hear from more about Stephan Cerns, but I think we're there. And Bernardo, let me just start with you, because we're hearing these calls, and I'm gonna start with that first one, where he is saying the explosive thing of him understanding that Madeline was gone, that her lips were blue, that she was pale, she was cold to the touch. What do you think when you hear this statement by itself? What kind of evidence could this be used for?
Well, definitely to show that he had knowledge that she had passed, that she was killed, of her whereabouts. And the question will be, well, how do you know that information? When was it that you saw her? Why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you call 911? So all these questions are questions that the jury's going to have. So it puts a tough question in front of the defense. And that is whether the defendant is going to have to testify in order to explain these questions, explain that conversation that he had over the phone. So the defense is now in a tough position, because now it's fair game in terms of the prosecution being able to use these recorded calls that came from his mouth.
Yeah, Paulette, do you think that he is there creating some kind of defense, or at least an excuse in front of his parents, that perhaps he did the disposal of the body, but he didn't cause the death? Because in other parts of that call, he says that he wishes he had called police instead of what he did. He wishes he had woken up Jen Soto in that moment.
To create a new narrative. As a defense attorney, jail calls are just the worst to deal with, because they're so hard to defend, because he's talking to a family member. And even though the recording very often tells them that this is being recorded on the phone, you hear jail phone calls where they're just trying to have a conversation with their parents, and sometimes they're exposing their deepest, darkest secrets. And it seems like that's what's happening here. I think he's going to have a real problem, because in those first interviews with the news, when he sat down, he said he had absolutely no idea what happened. The last time he saw her was when he dropped her off at school. So now the jury is going to hear this. So what's the truth?
I can see the prosecution comparing these, using them side by side in an opening statement even. Let's talk about the next call. Michael Jafer, there was one where he said we're all suffering here. He talks about Jen, doesn't implicate her at all in this, but he says we're all suffering. This has just turned everyone's life upside down. Do you think the prosecution can get in a call like that? And if they can, how's the jury going to react to it?
I think they absolutely could get in a call like that, because I don't think, I think the I don't think the prejudicial value overweighs its probative value. But what I also see in these calls, and especially with that call, is I have a theory. I think Stephan Cerns thinks that his parents are both idiots. And I think that he is more so defending himself from stupid statements that might come from his parents. If we recall, his dad was the person who volunteered his hard drive to the police they didn't even know existed. And his mom sent him a letter intimating that, hey, why are you suffering? Other people should also be suffering. And she kind of implicated him in doing it as well. Hey, you always know your customer, right? You're a parent, you know your kid. They know their kid. They clearly probably believe that their kid is a creep, but their kid they believe is a creep. But he maybe was one of those wily, smart creeps who knows how to basically, manipulate them, and kind of defending himself from them making stupid statements when he's on a call with them. I don't know, but this guy is a weird, creepy person. He's had a creepy background. His parents are creepy. So I think the prosecutors can bring this in, but it's going to have to be brought in with a whole I think all his jailhouse calls are going to be brought in, except for the ones with his attorneys.
Well, you're right. It is very odd the way he's talking to his parents, and it sounds like they could even be motivated for justice for Madeline if they're asking about other victims, other potential victims. We have to take a break. Think Tank, thank you for your analysis on that case.